Hello students, welcome to ACE IPM. My name is Hardik Mishra and today we are going to talk about a type of a question that was asked in IPMAT Indore 2025 and this was asked for the first time in IPMAT Indore. That's why when this question came up in the exam, a lot of students were petrified, they were confused. That is why today we are going to discuss conversation based reading comprehension. We are going to understand it and of course we are going to solve some questions. So let's first talk about what is a conversation based reading comprehension. But before that, we're going to talk about what is a transcript. Transcript is a written version of spoken words. Now, having said that, let's first talk about the format of the question. So there is an excerpt or a part of a transcript, and based on that, you were asked 6 questions. This is normal for IBMAT Indore. They ask 6 MCQs, and you need to answer them, of course, +4 and -1. Now, these RCs are basically, as I have already told you, that they are excerpts of transcript, and those transcripts are from podcasts or interviews wherein one person is asking some questions and the other person is answering. And while answering, he mentions some terms, some words, some ideas, his own point of view. Those ideas can be contradictory or supporting as well. So, having said that, let's now talk about types of questions that were asked. So, when we talk about types of questions, we need to understand these types. Okay, so you need to identify the contextual meaning of a word, contextual meaning of or the relevance of a phrase. Then there was a specific idea question, and then there was a main idea question. But now I hope all of you know what is the main idea question. Main idea question, wherein you need to understand the text, wherein you need to identify the subject and the theme of the text, and of course you need to choose the correct answer. The correct answer should clearly mention the main idea of the text that you have read. So, having said and done all these things, let's quickly move to the passage. Here is the passage. You can pause the video and read it on your own. Okay, I'm going to start with the explanation part. Conversation analysis. Read the following transcript and choose the answer that is closest to each of the questions that are based on the transcript. This is the direction that has been given to you. Now, Lucia Rahili, Global Editorial Director, the McKinsey podcast, she says, today we are talking about the next big arenas of competition, about the industries that will matter most in the global business landscape, which you describe as arenas of competition. What do we mean when we use this term? So weird, it is important what arenas of competition. And she's asking now, Chris Bradley, um, director McKinsey Global Institute, says, if I go back and look at the top 10 companies in 2005, top 10 companies in 2005, they were in traditional industries such as oil and gas, retail, industrials, and pharmaceuticals. The average company was worth about 250 billion. Okay. If I advance the clock forward to 2020, 9 in 10 of those companies have been replaced by companies that are 8 times bigger than the old guards. That means those companies that were based on traditional industries. And this new batch of companies that have replaced, of course, comes from these new arenas or competitive sectors. In fact, they're so different that we have a nickname for them. If you are a fan of Harry Potter, it's wizards versus muggles. Arena industries are wizardish. We found that there's a set of industries that play a very different set of that play by very different set of economic rules and get very different results, while the rest, the muggles, even though they run the world, finance the world, and energize the world, play by a more traditional set of economic rules. So these are some important points that you need to understand. Lucia Rayleigh further says could we put a finer point on what is novel, that means new or different, about the lens that you apply to determine what's a wizard and what's a muggle? So basically, she's asking that, to elaborate about it. So Chris Bradley says wizards are defined by growth and dynamism. Growth and dynamism. We looked at where value is flowing and places where value is moving, and where is the value flowing. What we see is that this set of wizards, which represent about 10% of industries, that means they are 10% of the industries, hog 45% of growth. That means they own 45% of growth in market cap. But there's another dimension or axis. That means there is another point of view, which is dynamism. Which is what? Which is dynamism. That is measured by a new metric we have come up with called shuffle rate. Shuffle rate. And to understand shuffle rate, we need to understand the next sentence. How much does the bottom move to the top? That is shuffle rate. It turns out that in this set of wizardish industries or arenas, the shuffle rate is much higher than it is in the traditional industry. Okay. Tushar Rahili, so where are we seeing the most profit? That means so far profit has not been discussed. Chris Bradley, the economic profit, which is the profit you make minus the cost of the capital you employ in the wizard industries, it's where R&D happens. That they are 2 times more R&D intensive. Who? Wizard. They are big stars, the nebulae, where new industry, new business is born. Nebula basically, if you have read about space and things, nebula is basically what? It is a mass of gases and dust particles where new stars born in space. So similarly, here the new businesses born. Okay, now let's move to the questions. I hope you've understood it. In the context of the conversation, dynamism most closely refers to the slow gradual growth and morphing of established companies, the rapid and frequent change in leadership and market position within the industry, the never changing reliance on established and unchanging business practice, the stability and predictability of traditional business industries. So, see, here it is mentioned, and dynamism is in the context of wizards, isn't it? It was in context of the wizard. So that is why option D is eliminated. Never changing reliance on established and unchanging business practices. No, it was about change. It was about how fast things are changing. So that is why slow gradual growth has also been eliminated, and that's why the answer is option B. I hope you got it. It was mentioned over here. Here, when Chris Bradley was replying, and he says wizards are defined by growth and dynamism, where things are flowing and moving. And of course, this sentence, how much does the bottom move to the top? All these things, indicate that dynamism was about the rapid and frequent change in leadership and market position within an industry. So that's why the answer is B. Moving to the next question, in the context of the conversation, the term arenas of competition refers to option 1 says specific companies that are considered to be powerful competitors, government regulations that control business competition, physical locations where businesses compete, broad categories of industries where companies engage in competitive activities. So to answer this, let's look at this particular part wherein he says, and this new batch of companies comes from these new arenas or competitive sectors. So which option is the correct answer? What should be the correct answer? The correct answer should be broad categories of industries where companies engage in competitive activities. Okay. So here from this particular part, as I've already told you, the competitive sectors we can identify the broad categories of industries where companies engage in competitive activities, and that's why the answer is option D. Moving to the next question, Muggles refers to industries that are characterized by rapid and frequent changes, of course not, exhibit high levels of market capitalization, uh, operate under traditional economic principles, are primarily focused on technological innovations. We've underlined this, and you can see over here that you know traditional set of economic rules, the Muggles. Okay, so that's why the answer should be what? Answer should be traditional economic principles. The answer should be option C. Going to the next question. Which one of the following does shuffle rate not measure? Not measure. Volatility of market leadership, churn within the arena of competition, overall profitability of traditional industries, relative change within an industry. See, it is talking about relative change. It is talking about churn within the arena of competition. It is talking about volatility. It is talking about all of these things. But it is not talking about one thing, that is overall profitability of traditional industries. And that is why the answer is option C. You can see over here, I've, emphasized how much does the bottom move to the top. Change, growth. But they're not talking about profitable. They're not talking about one thing, that is what? That is profitability of traditional industries. And that is why the answer is option C. Getting my point? Churn basically means, the the movement, the change, the turnover, and all of those things. But they're not talking about one thing, that is profitability, and that is why the answer is option C. Moving to the next question, wizard industries are characterized by slow rate of market capitalization growth. No. A higher concentration of economic profit and research and development, a reliance on traditional economic rules. That's absolutely wrong. C cannot be the answer. Lower research and development spending. No. A slower rate of market capitalization growth. The answer is no. The answer has to be option B, which was mentioned at the end of the passage. Okay, so you can see over here it is mentioned when Chris Bradley says economic profit, which is the profit you make minus the cost for the capital you employ, is in the wizard industry. It is where R&D happens. There's 2 times more R&D intensive. There are big stars, the nebulae where business is born. So that is why the answer has to be what? The answer has to be option B, a higher concentration of economic profit and research and development. Okay. Now let's move to the next question. Which of the following best and correctly summarizes the main idea of the conversation? Now, when we talk about the main idea of the conversation, what was the whole paragraph all about? The global economy is shifting back towards traditional industries as they offer more stable returns. Is the global economy is shifting back towards traditional industries? No. Newer dynamic industries termed wizards are experiencing significantly greater growth and profit compared to traditional industries. See, I hope all of you know, to identify the main idea, just focus on what the author is, talking more about, what the author is preferring, what the author is, emphasizing, and that is the main idea. So author is emphasizing dynamic industries, but let's read the other options. Traditional industries are constantly more profitable. No, not at all. He is also wrong. The term wizard and muggles are used to describe the magical elements of business success. Wrong. So the answer is option D. Hope you got it. Now let's move to the next set. Again, you can pause the video and read on your own, and then we are of course going to discuss. Okay. So let's get to the point. Let's read same instructions. Bruce Edwards, host IMF podcast program, says, give us a bit of a primer on how multilateralism came about. I mean, what was our first big exercise in nations working together for the greater good? So primer basically means he's asking for some primary input, basic fundamental input on how multilateralism came about, how it came into existence. Danny Kuo, professor of economics, Lee Kuan U School, says a good place to begin is at the end of the First World War. Woodrow Wilson, who was then president of the United States, okay, Woodrow Wilson felt that something was needed that would ensure peace, maintain collective security for the entire international community of nations, and he and other world leaders reckoned, that means they identified that something like World War One should never happen again. And their big idea was that they need to create an international community, something that had a one world vision of nation states that go together, they traded, that they interacted with each other in multilateral systems of laws, and that is what would create an international community that could be at peace. Okay, this was a wonderful idea. It was about the reign of law over all of humanity, but based on, in Woodrow Wilson's word, the consent of should be based on consent of the governed, a phrasing that, of course, comes from American Declaration of Independence, and this would be sustained by organized opinion on humanity of humanity. As we know, this vision actually went on and won Woodrow Wilson the Nobel Peace Prize. It was, however, much more popular with the international community than it was with his fellow Americans. That means other people were happy, but not Americans, other Americans. And the isolationist opposition in the US Congress decided that America would not go along with this idea. Strange. And so, when the international community did come together to form a multilateral order and called itself the League of Nations, America was not a member. Bruce Edwards further says, so the League of Nations was about addressing a balance of power issue. When did economics come into the picture as an incentive for greater collaboration? So when did economics come into the picture? He was asking about when economics came into the picture. So Danny Kuo, now that he says, Danny Kuo says, now that didn't happen until a little bit later, because the greater institutions of international economics did not come into being after the First World War. It was only after the next World War, that is the Second World War, that economics entered the picture, but in extrapolation from the Woodrow Wilson vision. That means it was derived from Woodrow Wilson vision with three great ideas. First, rule-based order, as you say, and this would include level playing field so that there would be open trade. There was a commitment, secondly, there was a commitment to peaceful dispute resolution, something that echoes things that we see in World Trade Organization with its appellant body that's supposed to engage in dispute resolution. And thirdly, and this third idea is about politics and economics, is that collaboration needed to be the default by which nations dealt with each other. Okay, collaboration was important. So these were three wonderful ideas, and they struggled in that geopolitical political climate until after the Second World War, when economics firmly entered the frame. Okay, so now let's look at the questions. According to the conversation, Woodrow Wilson's vision of a multilateral community was built on which of the following principles? Was built on peace would preserve through the dominance of strongest nation. Wrong. It was not talking about dominance. A rule-based system sustained by collective human opinion and consent. Yes. Why? Because as I've marked it also, the consent of the governed, a phrasing that comes from the American Declaration. So that's why This should be the answer. A unilateral action by powerful states to ensure global order. Wrong. Isolationism as a safeguard against international entanglements. Wrong. So the answer is option B. Moving to the next one. Why did the United States not join the League of Nations despite Wilson's advocacy? The international community excluded America due to mistrust. Wrong. The US Congress, influenced by isolationist sentiments, opposed participation. Yes. You can see over here, I marked also this particular part. The US Congress decided that America would not go along with this idea. America was not a member. That is why. So the isolationist idea was there. The next one is the League required high economic contributions America could not afford. Wrong. Wilson himself withdrew support. Of course not. So that's why the answer is D. Moving to the next question. When did economics firmly become part of the multilateral framework according to Danny Quo? This is an easy question. After what? After the Second World War. Which option says this? The answer is option C. Okay, very easy one. Here it is mentioned clearly. It was only after the next World War, the Second World War. Okay, so that is why the answer is, of course, option C. Not A, not B, not D as well. The answer is option C. Which of the following was not identified as one of the three major ideas extrapolated from Wilson's vision? The first option is a rule-based order promoting open trade. A rule-based order promoting open trade, a peaceful mechanism of settling disputes, mandatory economic sanctions for rule violation, international collaboration as a default approach. What should be the answer? The answer should be option C. Why? See, rule-based order promoting open trade was there. Peaceful mechanism for settling dispute was there. International collaboration as a default approach, it was there. What was not there? Mandatory economic sanction. See, I have marked them also, all of these as well. You can see open trade, rule-based open trade. Then you have peaceful dispute resolution. Then the collaboration as well. But there was no mention of what? Sanctions. So that's why the answer is option C. Okay, all of these A, B, and D were the three major ideas, but not C. So that's why C is the answer. The passage suggests that the League of Nations can best be seen as. How can you see that? How do you see a successful blend of political and economic cooperation that lasted beyond World War II? No, not at all. A bold yet flawed, it was bold yet flawed experiment in collective security undermined by US non-participation. Yes, US was not the part of it. And yes, it was, of course, that is the reason that, it was a flawed experiment. It was a flawed. Purely economic institution? No, economics came later. Okay, that is why C is eliminated. Isolationist initiative? No, they did not initiate this. That's why the answer is option B. Moving to the next question. The phrase consent of the governed. What do we mean by this? The consent of the governed. In Wilson's multilateral vision, most directly reflects his commitment to extending American Constitution principle to international relations, the influence of European diplomatic traditions as his policy formulation, a pragmatic, that means a practical approach to managing competing national interests effectively and more practically, his firm belief in the superiority of democratic institution over authoritarian systems. So what should be the answer? The answer should be option A, his commitment to extending American constitutional principles to international relations. You can see over here, I marked this. It says a phrasing that, of course, comes from the American Declaration of Independence. That's why the answer was option A. Okay, so that was the question. That's pretty much from my side for the day. Thank you. Have a nice day. Enjoy yourselves. Be safe and peace out. And as I always say, work hard and stay humble. Bye-bye. Take care and see you in the next session.